Cannabis is the most consumed illicit drug in the European Union today. However, the diverse approaches and policies different countries have about this drug make it a debated topic. Hello, I'm Mirko from Euractiv. In this video, we'll explore the recent German proposal to regulate the recreational use of cannabis. We'll discuss the stance of European countries on cannabis, compare it to other parts of the world, and try to understand what might change in the near future. If this topic interests you and you're keen on new matters, consider subscribing to our channel for more. Let's dive in. Germany is the most populated, richest and most influential EU member state. Its government, as promised during the 2021 electoral campaign, is working on a legislation to regulate cannabis consumption, which might become a law by the end of this year.
So cannabis legalization was actually quite a big part of the election campaign 2021 for the German federal elections. It was a big part of the campaign of both the Greens and the Liberals that are now in government. And it was one of the ways they were trying to reach young voters. So it's going to legalize the consumption of cannabis, and it's going to be, you're going to be able to grow cannabis plants in your home, up to 3, for your own use.
The German proposal signifies a substantial change in the EU's approach to cannabis. In most of the 27 member states, cannabis remains an illicit drug. While some, like France and Slovakia, maintain a stringent approach with severe penalties, others, such as Spain and Italy, have over the years decriminalized personal possession of small amounts of its consumption. However, prior to Germany's initiative, only Malta had moved towards a model of regulation and legalization of cannabis.
To be fair, the law passed in December of 2021. The law basically states that there would be the creation of cannabis associations, where one would, which are non-profit NGOs, where one would register, become a member, and you could start buying cannabis from those outlets. The other process of finding cannabis in Malta now would be to grow your own plants, which is there's a maximum of 4 plants. So basically, despite the fact that the law passed in December of 2021, the process of creating the social clubs or the associations, it's still underway. There have been a few hiccups or bumps in the road.
Within the EU, Germany and Malta are leading the way by working to regulate the private consumption of cannabis, with some experimental social clubs and pilot projects in some German cities to attempt the commercial sale of the product. Yet, when we compare this to cannabis legislation in Canada or in some US states, where commercial sale is allowed and created an industry generating wealth and tax revenues, the German Maltese approach appears more cautious. Why is that?
The emphasis has always been against commercialization. So I think that the guidelines and the legal basis of this new law, which regulates the use of cannabis, is fair on its users. It's fair on the community of people who smoke cannabis, but it also strikes a balance for society.
Cannabis legislation isn't just up to individual governments given the global challenge of drug trafficking. The UN addressed this with 3 conventions: the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, the Convention on Psychotropic Drugs, and the Convention Against Illicit Traffic. This labeled cannabis as particularly harmful, making its possession and sale punishable, with imprisonment for serious cases. In 2004, the EU adopted these principles with a Council framework decision on illicit drug trafficking, still in effect today, though personal possession is excluded. The difference between the UN Convention and the EU decision is enforceability. The UN lacks direct enforcement tools, the EU doesn't. This allows places like Canada or some US states to permit cannabis sales, while EU states face stricter constraints, especially given the EU's single market and border-free zones.
The reason for that is that there's a free market problem with that. So if you create a domestic market in Germany with a legalized market for cannabis, you would exclude cannabis suppliers from other EU member states, because there it would be still illegal. So a Spanish supplier could not grow cannabis for recreational purposes, meaning that the Spanish authorities would always say, well, you're growing cannabis for recreational purposes. It doesn't matter if you want to sell it in Germany and there it is legal. it is still drug trafficking what you do under our law. So that would be the first problem. The second problem would be, let's say a Spanish cannabis grower would try to export their cannabis to Germany. They would go through France. They have obligations under international law to actually stop that cannabis and to seize the cannabis and to kind of prevent it from going through their country. So you create all these free market problems.
The recent initiative from the German government could be a game changer in this context. While the German proposal is careful in its approach, it poses a significant challenge to the existing EU system. The pilot project on commercial cannabis sales might very well bring substantial changes.
What we can expect from legalization, I think then if these pilots are successful, then I think it will be a much easier job to convince the EU Commission, to convince other skeptical member states that there's really some benefit and some value in a legalization. And then I think everything is possible. But it is a long way. And we're talking about here about time ranges from 10 to 15, maybe to 20 years.
But what they're hoping to achieve with this is that they see how it can work and that this could provide arguments to go to Brussels and to convince the European Commission and the other member states that legalizing even the sale of cannabis could be the way forward for the EU.
Ultimately, Germany's proposal might also pave the way for broader medical cannabis use. While medical and research professionals have acknowledged therapeutic benefits, particularly in treating nausea from cancer medication and chronic pain in adults, several EU countries either prohibit such treatments or lack active programs.
I think we need, and Germany could set an example because they have a wonderful scientific tradition to uphold, and they uphold it usually very well. But if they set an example of a country that makes the study of cannabis easier, and then everything becomes easier. That is, if we have firm answers on questions that have been open now for 70 years, for example, does cannabis help in pain? If we have answers on these questions, then decisions can be made that are logical when it comes to the access to patients to the medicine, instead of finding the situation in which we are, where basically there is no rule and everything is very, very gray. So research it's not the only component. Look, culture is just as important, but research should at least lead the way, determining what's empirically correct and what's not empirically correct. Then anyone can make their decisions based on their own cultural attitudes.
So the years ahead could be interesting for the developments of policies related to cannabis. We'll keep you posted on these developments, and go check yourati.com if you want to find out more.